Well, welcome to the Lead Authors Podcast. I'm excited that you're here with me today, and I'm excited for this couple that I have coming up. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Lin Green, author, speaker, advocate, and inspiration behind the blog is a Lifestyle by Lin Green. Lin's book, entitled Enough with the Secrets, Mama, courageously shares her personal journey of healing from maternal wounds, breaking generational cycles, and discovering purpose through pain. But healing doesn't happen in isolation. And today we're also joined by her husband, Mickel, who has stood beside her as a partner, a witness, and a source of strength through this remarkable journey. Together, they'll give us a transparent look at how healing can transform not just individuals, but marriages, families, and future generations. Well, it's a privilege to welcome the two of you here today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for having us. Truly a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, I know when I met you, I thought, oh, I need to interview you, the two of you, because you just have a powerful story of just your backstory of what you do and how you support your community and so many different things. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your backstory, what it is you do, how you serve and support.
Yeah, so I'm Lynn Green, obviously the less masculine voice on on this audio. I was born in Puerto Rico, but my mother's from the Dominican Republic. She traveled often, and she was in Puerto Rico at the time that my sister and I were born. We migrated here, and since I have absolutely developed a love for reading and writing as a kid, that miraculously turned me into working and serving the community. So I've always had a desire to help people, and a part of that was likely a lot of the things that I saw, growing up in my childhood. I ended up working with the Department of Homeland Security early on, and beyond that, I was also the Department of Juvenile Justice case manager, which landed me ultimately in my current position for the sheriff's office in my community as an advocate. I started working with juveniles, which is where I met Mikkel. We both worked in the same unit, working as youth interventionists of sorts. He was a sergeant in the unit at the time. And the rest is history. We've literally just have been locked in ever since. We both have the same desire and purpose to just serve and help others, and help others thrive in life. And that has ultimately catapulted us into business, by growing our consulting business, as often people would come to us with questions and advice and need for guidance, especially as it related to the field in which we were working. But we were working more with the community. And so seeing that need, and also being entrepreneurs ourselves, at heart, we started pouring into the lives of small business owners as well. So we work with nonprofit organizations and small business owners. But even through that business journey, especially during COVID, I reopened my passion and desire to write, which is where the blog came in. The
Hmm,
inspirational blog, at a time where I felt people needed it the most.
sure.
COVID was a really tough time for most people. And being a crisis interventionist, with the work that I do, I felt like I needed to pour into people that way. That led to a publishing deal, which led to the release of my book, Enough with the Secrets, Mama.
Wow,
Mm.
that's great.
Exactly.
You, you guys make me tired just hearing your schedules and hearing what you do. I mean, you're just going nonstop, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And you, Mikkel, would you like to?
Well, yeah, I'm Mikhail Green. I'm Lynn's husband. Obviously, she's the author of the couple. Um, and like you said, we met at work some years ago. We've been attached at the hip ever since. I was born in Washington D.C. early area. Actually, I was born in Malcolm Crowe Hospital, which is the home of Air Force One. I like
Hmm,
that fact because
wow.
people just don't know that. But so I've been in law enforcement for almost 30 years. I'm also a service-connected disabled vet. I was in the United States Army. And like Lynn said, as I worked through the community as being a police officer and being a sergeant and working with the Police Athletic League and different things, people were always coming to me, always coming to us. And we would just, it was like, we need to do something with all the information, all the experience we have, and all the connections, in the neighborhood, and all the people that actually like us and will come to us for advice. So then that's how Green Consulting LLC started. And we've been rolling ever since. And as far as her book goes, she always had that passion to write, and I was just glad that she put the pen to paper. And after she put the pen to paper, that was it. It was all she wrote. She was gone. But it was getting that pen to paper was yeah. That was, hey, we got it done though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. So tell me, with all the experience that you have, military and policing and all the things that you do, what made you decide to write Enough with the Secrets, Mama?
Yeah, so that was out of a personal mission.
Mm.
Um, there's a saying, and I don't know the exact saying, so don't quote me on this, but there's an understanding that as writers, we are to write for the need of others or for the need of the people. And what was happening to me, especially around the time when I was finally deciding to write my book, I kept having conversations with people in the community about the same thing. And by people, it was mostly women who were hurting and having a difficult time. And somehow the conversation always led to this maternal mother-daughter relationship issue. It's almost
Mm.
as if it literally kept being put before my very eyes, and I had no choice but to say, okay, like, I hear you. This is exactly what you want me to put out there. But coming from my own experience and the trouble I had, and I know how just painful it is to go through life having a difficult relationship with your mother. As a daughter, I knew that because I had finally healed from that it was now my job to be able to help others do the same.
Mm.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know that, you said that you found yourself in a place where you were healed from a lot of those experiences. Did you find writing the book kind of opened up some of those things and took that healing a little bit deeper?
Absolutely, it did. There were parts in the book that I had to really understand my mother. So that
Mm.
meant I had to dig a little deep as to where she came from, how she became the woman that strong, independent, and woman that she was. Even though she had been married, she always had this independent spirit. And I needed to understand how that upbringing that she had, how her relationships impacted her in a way that made her become the mother that she was to us. And so, in that process, for sure, that definitely helped with my healing.
Yeah, yeah. Because I could imagine your book, it obviously deals with, deep, just that deep personal journey, that healing journey. Can you share how, confronting some of those past experiences, when you're writing your book, impacted your personal sense as a mother, as a wife, and as a woman of faith?
Yes, the way having to confront a lot of those things made me realize that I did not want to repeat a
Mm.
lot of the ways that I saw in my mother, because it didn't serve me as a child, and it certainly didn't serve me in my adolescence, and it most certainly did not serve me in my marriage, because there were examples that were set that made it like a tug of war in her marriages. I noticed there was
Mm.
this constant battle for control in a way. And unfortunately, that's how I lived my life up until I was in my mid 20s. And then the healing happened after that, slowly. But that made me want to be a better mother, and want to do things a little differently as it came to raising my child, as well as just in relationships with others. It made me want to have more peace and calm in my relationships,
Mm.
and not be so had this conflicting relationship,
Right.
which is what I normally saw in her with people.
Sure.
And
Sure.
there's always peace after the storm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, so, so when working through all that is how you get to the peace, and and her having a relationship with her mom. It's funny because people kept coming to her, and they always end up talking about the relationship with their mom. And I always used to say, well, women can't get along, and that's because
Mm,
I would see that all the time. And luckily I didn't have any sisters other than a stepsister, but we got along fine because there's no competition there. So it was good. It was cool watching her go through the process. But as she goes through the process, you could tell that some of those things had to be talked about again because
right.
you have to work through them. But we're here now, and I mean, and God in this journey too. I don't know, she came a lot closer with God and spiritually, and us both reading the Bible and things like that. So when I say the book writing, her writing the book helped us in so many ways, not just her. It also helped us.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to ask that, for both of you, just talking about marriage, because sometimes going through this kind of healing, this kind of a journey can put a lot of tension on on a relationship, can put a lot of tension on a marriage. So how did you guys navigate that relationally between the two of you as you're going through this?
Well, we pray. We do different. We do the Bible app, so we do different plans in the Bible app, and we talk about the things they talk about. And one of the ongoing things in every one of them, I don't care which one I read, is always communication. It's always
Mm,
communicating. It's always communicating. And the times where we had the hardest times when we wasn't communicating, because when you stop
right.
talking, nothing happens. Or if you can't talk in a way that is the person can feel like you're not talking at them, so like I said, because we didn't want to go through the same thing like she said with what she saw in her relationship, and it's in my mom and dad's relationship. It was a total different kind of mess. But that's how I definitely wasn't going to repeat that. I didn't want to repeat that. So that's how we dealt with it, through the Bible app, and praying and having conversations where you have to say what's on your mind, and it's not always what the other person wants to hear, but
Yeah.
you have to say those things. You have to get things out so you can deal with them in a way that your marriage can keep going, and everybody can be happy over time, because you have to work through things.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. And you bring up a great point, because so oftentimes when we hit, when we're going through stuff like this, it's easier just to avoid talking about it. It's easier to avoid the situation rather than diving into it. So I applaud the fact that you were both brave enough to, you know, make communication such a big, big part of it.
Oh yeah, it was, and it wasn't easy at times,
Sure.
but
No,
but
I can certainly
but
remember one
yeah.
time early on in our marriage. I think probably within the first year of our marriage, we had
Yeah, that was all your fault. No, I'm no.
we had a disagreement, and in my instinct, my reaction initially is always to just go. That's always been my reaction. I always pick up and say, okay, I don't think we can do this. So we're
Mm,
1 year into marriage, and we had a disagreement, and it wasn't anything major, but for some reason, for me, it felt like it was. And I said, okay, like something to that extent, I don't think we can do this. And he says, how is it that you go from 0 to 100? It's either all or nothing.
mm,
And he made me realize that marriage doesn't work that way.
mm.
We have to work through it. It's not just, okay, we had a disagreement, and I think we should just go our separate ways. I really had to learn that. So being honest, like he said, just really calling each other out when we know things are a little off kilter, and listening, it was been the key.
Yeah, yeah. And that's so tough. So sometimes when you get confronted that way, with somebody in your face, saying, what are you talking about? What are you talking about running away and giving up and packing it in? I mean, that just doesn't seem to be a natural thing. So yeah, that's great that you were able to turn and just say, you know what, you're right. Maybe there's some sense to this. So that's really
Yeah.
good.
Yes.
That's really good. And but like you say, it's not an easy thing to take for, for a man and woman because they're so opposite in their approach to dealing with things and expressing things and just sharing and all that.
And your life experiences combined with pride can really get you off track.
Mm,
So all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff has to be kept in check, and the way it's kept in check is through communicating, and communicating with love.
Yeah.
Let me say that.
And that's a lot of what I got in my example with my mother was pride. She was always
mm,
very proudful, but
Yes.
very pride filled. Even till this day, she is that way. So I had to work through it.
yeah. Now, in the book, you talk about breaking generational cycles, and for the listeners that aren't really familiar with that term and what that really means, why don't you just share your take on it and where you were coming from?
Yes. So for me, breaking of generational cycles meant really taking a look at the way my mother was, the way even beyond that, the way her mother was to her, the way her mother was to her, to my grandmother, and seeing the commonalities and a lot of the ways that they raised their children that have not served our family. And so when I took that deep dive into exploring our generational trends in a way that really amplified the women in our family, we're all very independent,
Hmm.
very independent women. And um, I also got to see that it took a very special man in their lives to get them to really focus on the things that maybe would serve them instead of considering, okay, this is how I was raised, so this is just who I am, and not taking those examples and saying, okay, no, we have to do something different because obviously something's not working. In the relationship with my mother was very close to her father, and I always wondered why she wasn't as close to her mother. And that was the main question that I had going into this. I said, well, what happened? Because maybe that's where the disconnect is. And I don't want to repeat it with my child. I want to know, what can I do to break this so that or their generation and generations to come are bringing up children that are healed, that are able to communicate, that are able to consider their children's feelings, that are able to at least take, for example, the way children are now. I say we're raising a very there's a very isolated group of
Generation. Mhm.
kids that are out and about now. And I think that's because the way the world has turned its way to be. But when my mother was growing up, things weren't that way. When I was growing up, things weren't that way. So it's my
Yeah.
job to now shift with the times and consider what worked for me is not going to work for him. What worked for my mother is not going to work for me. And that's where I think it's important for the breaking of those cycles to consider when especially as we're raising children, that we're
Hmm.
individuals.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad that you didn't just stick with the old adage, that that's just the way I am, right? That's just me. Take it or leave it, because that's so often, the script that people buy into, isn't it? Rather than really examining like you did. I mean, you put it under a microscope in your book and through your process and through your thinking, you put it through a microscope to really deep, dive deep into that and not just accept it at surface level. So you mentioned that your mother and your sisters and everybody had strong men in their lives. Was that the case, or were there some that weren't so balanced?
Well, no, not with any of my siblings. If I were to think of my aunts, my mother's sisters, they either had a strong male presence in their life, or they just didn't have one at all.
Okay.
And I started seeing that pattern of the ones who were on their own and did not have the a man by their side. And I would attribute it likely to, you know, the strong character of
Mm.
a woman who made it difficult for a man to stand by. And then it also, you know, in certain cases, you know, they were just weren't ready to be the head of the household or the provider. You know, in different circumstances there were different stories, is what I found. But it really made me consider just looking into that a little bit and saying, okay, what has actually landed in me, and how can I change that?
Yeah. Well, from what I know of Mikkel, I can tell you've got a strong, masculine man in your corner that's very well balanced in his energy. Mikkel, was there a time where Lynn was going through this journey of healing and processing that as a man you were like, honey, maybe you're going a little bit too deep on this, or were you always kind of like cheering her on from the sides?
Yeah, I was cheering on from the side, but in writing, and we would talk about the book, as you know, because men, we are protectors and providers. I wanted to make sure, not you can't put so much information in the book because it's still her family, even though
Mm,
it's still her story, it's still her family, and it's
yeah.
still our family. So I didn't tell her what not to put, but I did. We did talk about a couple of things that was in the book. I mean, but I wanted to make sure, because she was writing that from her heart and trying to get out what she needed to get out. So I think we found a good balance. And she found a balance in the information, which I thought was good because to me, after I read the book, I was like, okay, now we can do a second book because
Mm,
now it's different unanswered questions or different things with her family and her coming from Puerto Rico. It's all kinds of things. So, but yeah, and I'm the
sure.
masculine man that she needed. Not
No, that's great. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I mean, culturally, there's so many different things as well. How women are raised or the roles that they have to step into in other cultures, and then kind of clashing in the U.S. or coming into the U.S. and navigating all of that is got to be challenging. And you know, I mean, obviously, through this book, you became very vulnerable, very real with the stories and reflecting on your personal journey. Um, were there moments where, there were just unexpected things that happened that just brought great strength and revelation in your own relationship?
As I was writing the book, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes. As far as strength, the chapters where I write about our experience in business and investing, that was a really tough time because it shook us to the core. You know, it,
Mm,
it describes how he retired from his law enforcement job for the sake of investing and building wealth for our family. And the investment that we made ultimately, even though we were doing very well within those 2 years, it took a toll on us. And what we found at the end of that was that we literally came to an understanding that this was not going to shake our foundation,
mm,
because it started to get a little difficult towards the end. And that COVID happened, so it
yeah.
shut down the business. And it was a beauty business. And so that was one of the first businesses that were shut down. Barbershops, beauty businesses, you name it, any contact with clients. It was an absolute no. We had to shut down. And that kind of, if anything, was a blessing in disguise for us because
mm,
we were already feeling like we were spinning our wheels, and we were doing a lot because I was still working full time while running this business full time. And he ended up going back to work at one point towards the end of those 2 years. And it just became too much. What we noticed at the end was that we were on each other's side, and we were open to accepting each other's consideration of, okay, I think it's time we walk away from this. So I think that in itself brought us a lot closer.
mm. That's great.
Yeah, when you lose a $250,000, it brings you closer.
Sure.
It
good,
makes you
bad,
want
or
to hug a
indifferent.
lot. It makes you want to hug a lot.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that's great. I love that. So why don't we talk a little bit about the journey that you take your readers on through this book? Like let's dive a little bit into, just
Yeah.
the journey that you take them on.
Yeah, so I start off expressing or basically diving into the my mother's family, how she what she was born into in the time that she was living in the Dominican Republic in Santo Domingo at that time. What were things like, so I really delved into the history, how she was raised. She was born in 1946. Don't let her know that I told you that. So things were a little different then, and the political climate of the country really um, transitioned during the time that she was looking to become more independent. There was a women's movement, kind of similar to what we're experiencing now in these last few years. That gave her a lot of the courage to, take her family and just grow. And so she did a lot of traveling. I described that in the book. What I also describe is how through those travels, from us being born to us moving to the United States and then moving up and down the East Coast of the United States, a lot of those things that happened, how that affected our relationship and how
Mm,
that ultimately made me the person I became. What I witnessed a lot in my childhood was her incessant desire to fix my brother, who was at that time he was an alcoholic, he was abusing substances, and that became the tension in which we lived as a kid.
mm,
So, and then I have an older sister who's a very free spirited, she just did whatever she wanted to do. And there was me who was watching all of this and seeing the anguish that my mother was experiencing and saying, I am going to be that one child who is not going to give her any trouble. Taking on that responsibility created in me a sense of needing to be perfect.
mm,
Everything had to be perfect. The perfectionism that I created carried me into life, pretty much from middle school to high school to college to marriage, to motherhood. I was really, everything that I did, I wanted to do well.
mm,
And I have done well in terms of my career. Anything that I set my mind to, I can accomplish it, but at what expense? So that's what I go into, is a lot of what that relationship and not having the maternal bond and the just conversation with my mothers that I needed conversations, how that ultimately made me just depend on me, and
mm.
how that ultimately affected me in the long run, and how I healed from it.
Mm. So what is your desire, the outcome desire for your readers after they finish reading your book? What is the desire that you have for them?
Yeah, so I really want people to, and women, and the reason why I think it's important that my husband is sitting here by my side is because I know that this healing journey has not just been about me; it's been about those who surround me, and I had to learn, just as I want the readers to get, is that healing isn't a race, that it's certainly not a straight line. And so we have to be okay with knowing that it's a process, and that sometimes you're going to feel stuck in that process. And that's okay, because it just means you need to spend a little bit more time in that space to
Mm,
get the full healing. And that trust that, God is still working even in those moments. As far as healing in a relationship, what I want people to get from this book is that it requires grace,
mm,
grace for yourself, grace for others, especially us as a couple, or in a relationship, knowing that everyone is healing at a different pace, and having that love and patience and faith, knowing that as long as you're moving forward together, you can accomplish it. So I always say brokenness doesn't have to define you, it can refine you.
Mm.
And it's the hope that I want to leave people with that are listening and that read the book.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so, Mikkel, from your perspective, knowing, what was written in the book, the journey that Lin is taking people through, what do you see the reader really gleaning from this book or gaining from this book?
I think they're gonna see humble beginnings. I think they're gonna see where Lin Mary went through some things, some
Molestation, I
sexual
do speak on that.
molestation,
Mm.
her need to be perfect, because some people, they suffer with that a lot in the world, want to be perfect, and you just can't be. And I think after they read through that and see all the things that she had around her, and in the meantime still trying to connect to her mom, that people can realize that, hey, you know what, she did it, so now I can do it.
Mm.
Because I've talked to women before, they say they haven't talked to their mother, and I'm like, but she's still alive. So talk to her. And I even tell people, I'm gonna send you a link to my wife's book, because read this book, because as long as that person is still alive, you can still heal, you can still
Mm.
connect. Put those things away, because life is short. And I want people to read this book and know that, you know what, even if I have a sister I haven't talked to, because I always talk about girls, because guys, we do things a little different. We'll call you and call you a bad name and then talk to you and say I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But women are, it's a little more deeper than that. So we want them to read this book and be able to put that book down and say, you know what, let me call that girlfriend that was my best girlfriend for 10 years, and I let one little argument split us up. Let me
Mm.
call and talk to my mother, because I was mad at her because she did something for my sister that she didn't do for me. Look, small things. And I just
Sure.
want people, when they read their book, to put that book down and pick up their phone, or pick up and text somebody that they haven't been connected to, or call somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And one
that.
last thing I wanted to add to that also, because I really harp on this a lot, is just that healing doesn't mean a perfect ending. Healing doesn't mean a happily ever after, the happily ever after that you envisioned. What that means is, as you've processed all of this, is knowing what is going to make you happy and whole, and where to understand where someone is and you can't change. And so being okay with that, that's where healing is. Being okay with knowing that my mom probably will never be the person who will sit down and have a conversation with me and say, oh, what did you do today? Oh my goodness, well, how did you do that? And ask all the questions. She's just not going to ever be that person.
Right.
And I'm okay with that, because I'm going to love her just as she is, set the boundaries that I need to set, and make sure that I continue to find healing through life within the journey. So that is what I want to encourage people the most is, don't have this realization or this understanding that you're going to change the person.
Right.
Certainly just accept them for who they are and set the boundaries that you need to, so that you continue to be happy and whole.
Yeah, no, that's good. Because it's so true. I mean, when we think about healing, we think, I get a cut on my finger or on my arm and it heals, it's gone, it's whole again. But, the healing that we're talking about here, emotional healing, is just a process, it's a journey, like you say, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. It is. And it's
Yeah.
understanding that you've got to take it for all in every way in which it's going to come, and take bits and pieces from that if you can. Hold on to the good things, avoid the bad, and keep on moving.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, I can tell there's some real gold for women to break through some of the generational things and to really have a deeper understanding of communicating between generations, communicating between family members. Like you said, Mikkel, that sometimes girls can hold on to petty things, right? And not let them go. And, I mean, guys, I mean, on the other side of it, on the emotional scale, we're not the greatest at communicating our emotions and stuff. So, what would you say to, men listeners right now that are listening? What would you say to them about, sharing their emotions, and what has this journey with Lin really taught you in terms of being an emotional support and sharing?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I think I would tell them, with one, sharing their emotions and being vulnerable is hard. A lot of us, like, I grew up with a dad that was in the army. He didn't talk much. He didn't hug much. He didn't tell you
Mm,
I love you much, but he showed you with everything that he done. He provided. He made sure he was protected. He did all those things. So I would say be vulnerable and be willing to talk about some things that are not comfortable. But
mm,
in that also, especially in you and a husband-wife relationship, understand the word evolving, because you're going to evolve. You're
yeah.
going to evolve, and you're going to keep on. Things are going to change. This year is going to be different from next year. Limmer and I have been married. It'll be what, going on 11 years, and she's been married to 5 different Mikkels.
Mm.
Okay, so and it's gonna be 5 more. So we're gonna evolve,
I
and
hope not.
it's gonna be 5 more. But all of those are gonna move slower and talk faster. So we have to be able to
Just
evolve
kidding.
together and do because life is short, but we have to, and it's hard for guys. I know, believe me, it was hard for me. Me and her talking, and it's hard, and to me, what helped me is reading the Bible, and how it talks about communication and
Mm,
communicating in a way that the person feels like you're trying to actually communicate with them and not yell at them, or not, so, and that can be real tricky, trying to find that, and we've been where we've
That
had some
balance.
conversations and it's been off balance, you
mm,
know and the other thing is too, with the wives, and I'm gonna say this to the wives because I had to say this to my wife. You know your husband, so when your husband says something and you take it in a way that he didn't mean it, because we got to remember, you still know your husband. But guys, we don't put all those words together like women do. We might leave
mm,
out 2 or 3 words, but you know the person's heart, so don't jump down his throat. Give him grace
Mhm.
and give him a chance to add those extra words in the conversation before you, because the way men work, and I've talked to my friends, is once you keep shutting us down, eventually we're going to shut down forever.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I would say that, guys, be open and just communicate in a way that's going to be healthy for both of you, because it's going to work
Yeah.
out in the long run.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. And Lynn, what has this whole journey of, reflecting on your mother, and, I'm probably sure you kind of traced it back to grandmothers and great grandmothers, looking at the generational stuff that's come through, but how has it changed your communication with Mikkel? How would, what would you suggest to women in communicating with their men?
Yeah, I would definitely say pause
Mm,
first, because my tendency was always to snap back and have a response ready.
yeah.
Um, I literally can remember my mother having conversations with my father. She remarried, and that was really the man that raised us. I call him dad. That's the father I'll ever know. And a lot of times she wouldn't let him speak.
Mm,
And I noticed that in my behavior. So really just taking a pause
mm,
and considering, before you speak the words you say, is it going to be helpful or is it going to be harmful? And I'm speaking in terms of your relationship. So if you find that it maybe it's bordering on harmful, it might not be the time to have the conversations.
yeah.
Or at least just pause and think things through. I have had to do a lot of just processing, myself before I can fully express, just the way I speak and express myself. Sometimes it's like we're speaking different languages, and I know we hear that a lot. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and
Yeah.
that's a common thing, that you're speaking a different language. So it's just remembering that sometimes that we, maybe what we're saying makes sense to us, but it won't make sense to them.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. I
Hmm.
mean, you guys, bring up communication a lot, so I can see that it's important to you. And I mean, active communication is just really listening, isn't it? That's the biggest part of communicating, is the listening part.
Yep, yep, listening. Yep,
Absolutely.
that's a big part of it.
Yeah. But to your point, Lynn, we forget about that stuff. We forget the pause, right? Just kind of pause rather than just thinking about the next rebuttal, where rather than just pausing and listening.
Mhm.
Yes, yes. And that's not to say there are not going to be moments that is
Oh,
just,
sure.
pops right on
Yeah,
out.
because that happens.
Yeah, yes.
You keep working through it, but yeah, it's just at least acknowledging, and being okay with being called out on, like he'll be quick to tell me, like, okay, like, are you gonna let me finish? And that's when, because I don't realize I'm doing it, and
Right.
I'm like, okay, yes, you're right, and I do sit and listen. And
Yeah.
oftentimes it's if the emotions are high and you've got a lot of things going on, we manage a lot in our day to day, between being a voice of reason for someone in crisis,
Mm.
which in those cases, it's like I'm trained to just sit and listen. But there's something about walking through the door in the four walls of my own home where I feel like, okay, everything that I've kept inside all day, I'm ready to, to
Dump it
speak.
on, and I like hold on to that.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's
Yeah.
weird.
Wow. I mean, I can tell that you have so much, the two of you have so much to offer, couples, individuals, whether it's in business, whether it's in life, just given your history. What are ways that you support people, and what are ways that people can work? I know that some, after listening to this, are going to want to call you up. They're going to want to get a hold of you and say, help, like, I can't pause. I can't take that break. I can't, I
Yeah.
can't make him listen or her listen. So what are ways that people can work with you?
Yeah, I mean, and that goes, and I'm speaking of the wide range of array of people that we serve, right? We're working in the community, or whether we're teaching a workshop on leadership, whether we're training at a nonprofit organization, or at a small business. Communication is key in all of those areas,
Hmm.
in different ways. And so I think a lot of people sometimes don't know how to have the appropriate communication with, whether it's with their staff or with their friends or with their family or with their spouses. It's knowing how to, in a way, how to blend the skills that you have to really serve the people that you're serving, whether it's in a relationship or in business.
Mhm.
So we do that a lot through workshops and trainings that we do with nonprofit organizations or small businesses, but also with our work within the community. Oftentimes I'll just let someone express themselves, and if they're in crisis, and that's okay to do because they have to
Mhm.
release. But we also need to know how to guide them in the right way so that they're making some progress, because life is all about making forward
Yeah.
movement, right?
Yes. So
Mm.
some of the things we do, like I said, other workshops where we do leadership training,
Mm.
helping people deal with their staff. Like I've been a police officer for almost 30 years, so I've dealt with some difficult people. I've ensured that. We also do some actual hand-to-hand trainings where we work with nonprofits, profitable organizations. All that Limmer is going to tell you how they can get in touch with us, and
Mhm.
we'll go from there. We'd be happy to work with anyone. We are in it for the community, in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I like about the two of you. You just have tremendous hearts just to give and to serve. And I know that your passion is to see people set free from not only from these generational things, but from relational things and from other things as well. So why don't you share, some of the best ways for people to get in touch with you guys?
Yes, yes. So right now, most of our work, including some of our brochure for Green Consulting, is on my inspirational blog. We're in the process of revamping our Green Consulting website. When that's good to go, you can reach us at greenconsultingofficial.com. But right now, best way to reach is through the inspirational platform. Is the lifestyle, which is ISSA live, like live style, style.com. And on social media, we're Green Consulting LLC _ and it's the lifestyle.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. So we'll make sure that we have all these links up there that people can reach out and connect with you. And what about your book? How can they get your book?
They can get my book anywhere they sell
Anywhere they
books.
sell books.
Awesome.
Yes. And anywhere that there's an online retail store, you can purchase the book. It's available everywhere. There's also a link through my It's the Lifestyle page that will lead you right to every link where you can purchase the book. And also through my Shopify account for autographed books, you can purchase on there too. But
Yes.
It's the Lifestyle link tree will take you right to all those places.
Good. I'm glad you mentioned that one because I was going to ask, where can somebody get an autographed book?
Yep.
Because I think that is so powerful and so important for authors to have that.
Yep. Oh
Yes,
yeah.
and
Oh
what I
yeah.
found, it's been so so well received by the readers. It's
Sure.
there's something about having a book that's signed by
Yeah.
an author
People
that
love it.
makes it so personal.
Yes.
And I usually would write a personal message in the book because I know this healing journey is it's very near and dear to my heart. So that is important to me to have an autographed book go out. So there's definitely a link to do that.
Yes. No, that's great. And so now tell me, is there a future book? I mean, it sounds like you've got a few more stored up inside there. So what's next for you?
Absolutely, yes. There's certainly a couple book ideas. One in particular, I'm hoping by the end of the year we get to get out and do a little bit of research. That's going to be fun. I really want to explore my relationship with my biological father, who I explain in the book how we ended up go separating, and it's important for me to do the same as I did with my mother.
Mm,
Except with my biological father, I never really had a relationship per se. And so
right.
I want to understand same things, where he comes from. That's one of the book ideas. And a couple others in the works. Beyond that, I'm continuing to promote and be available for speaking engagements and booking, different contracts with the business, as well as speaking engagements for Mickel and a lot of what he's doing with training, physical training, security awareness, and all of that we offer as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's so key.
Mhm.
Just that physical awareness, I mean, not only the relational awareness, which you're tackling and writing about, but the physical awareness is so key and important as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No. So I wanted to circle back to one last thing before as we wrap up here. But you mentioned God and communication and having this a kind of it sounds like it's the foundational part of your marriage, of your relationship. Do you want to touch on that a little bit? Because you brought it up a few times, and I wanted to circle back, but we just got on to other things.
Let me ask.
Well, I'll start, and I think
You
it'll
start.
be a great transition for
Oh
you.
boy. Thank you for your assistance.
So I'll say this, and I think the reason why communication is so big. Number one, coming from a mother who did not communicate very much, communication is super important to me.
Mhm.
When I don't have communication, I get a little uncomfortable. We've experienced that in our marriage. When there hasn't been good communication, it gets a little uncomfortable. And so through our marriage, as we've grown, because if I dare say my age, which I'm okay with, I'm 44, but we met when I was 26. And so we dated for a while, and then we ultimately later got married. But there's been a lot of changes in the way that we communicated from the
Mm,
very start. You're talking about mid 20s to 44.
mhm.
And especially for him as well, because as he mentioned, he grew up in a very militaristic kind of household. And I
Sure.
grew up in a soft household, so to speak. And so these are two different communication styles, that we really had to work through. So the only way I think we've been able to get this far, and Lord willing, God grant us at least 60 more years.
Don't nobody want to live that long to know freaking 100 years old, 120, whatever.
Rocking in our rocking chairs. I imagine there will be less communication by then, but at that point, we would have had it down, and all we've got to do is gesture and understand what each other
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah, so
Would you
so
agree?
yeah, I agree. I think first of all, the foundation has steadily or went over to the Bible and to praying. And now it wasn't always that way. So, I wasn't always praying. Like there were times I remember where she was praying every day and I might pray once a week. So we once we came together, once again, that's that thing about being vulnerable. And then I started doing the same thing. Then I saw some things changing about communication. So that foundation became more important than I thought it was. So
Mm.
so it was really, it was cool to see it. I didn't really tell her that because she'd have been like, I told you should have been praying with me. You know how that goes. So but once I got into it and once we started doing Bible app plans and stuff, I realized that it was just so much easier to type in something that we could talk about than to try to get the words out because
Mm.
then, sometimes words are not perceived as well. So I think that helped a lot too. But I think having that foundation made our relationship better and made us able to communicate better. And that's
Mm.
key. Because when you find a good woman, you're gonna hold on to her with all your might and
Yeah.
what you're supposed to do. And so I'm thankful to God that, we're together. I'm thankful that, I gotta say, growing up I went to church every Sunday. My mother dragged me into church twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. But I got away from that and I'm glad that I've come back to it in our marriage and in our relationship, and it's proved to be positive.
The
Yeah.
principle. I think
Yeah.
that's what's guided us.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. So, look, as we close things up, what pearls of wisdom, what inspiration would you want to leave with couples, with individuals as we close?
Oh, now you look at me. Okay. So
You're the inspirational one.
I would
Yeah.
I would say with couples, the man and the woman, to be slow to speak and listen to your partner, and whatever they tell you, think about it and give them grace before you respond.
Mm.
Yeah. Definitely being patient.
That will, yeah, that
Mhm.
that that patience and that grace and understanding. And for the wives out there, men, we communicate differently, wives. We communicate differently. You got to give us grace. You got to give us time. Don't shut your man down, because I've been shut down before, and it's not pretty, because then now they have all these things they want to say and they can't say them because they think you're going to shut them down. So
Mm.
give the man grace. Don't shut him down. Ask him to use some more words. And that happened to us early, and she was like, and I would tell her, give me a minute. Let me use some more words. Let me get
Mm.
everything out, because men, we don't practice expressing ourselves. We don't talk to baby dolls when we're growing up. We don't do none of that.
Yeah.
They don't understand how. I don't think people really understand how important that is in a little girl's life. They talk to baby dolls growing up. We don't do that. We throw the Tonka toy across the room and then go kick it. That's how we treat stuff. So some of that stuff that we don't know that we're being bred coming up with our communication. And boys, is they don't be a girl, don't be crying, don't do that. So we're taught to keep everything inside. And
Yeah.
when we get to where we are married, it harms us, and we have to get that stuff out. So give your man grace. Know that we communicate differently. He loves you. He did, and let him get it out, and y'all communication will get better, and your relationship will get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd like to add, that him being my safe place through my healing journey was important.
Mm.
I needed to feel safe.
Sure.
And a lot of times, women, especially if we've been through things, there is that sense of instability that affects a lot of the ways that they move and carry on and talk and what they do. So being that safe place for me was important, and having him be that made a big difference.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And for those of you just listening to the broadcast, Mikkel just leaned over and gave her a kiss on the cheek. So just had to throw that in there. But no, this has been amazing. So look,
Yeah.
I know that people are going to want to go out and grab a copy of Enough with the Secrets, Mama. And I know that they'll be waiting in anticipation for the next volume where it's talking about the man relationship. And I could just see some powerful stuff coming through the two of you as you do the research and do the study and begin to dig into those generational things as well. I can tell it's going to be a powerful thing. So we'll make sure we have all the links available for people to connect with you, because I can imagine just how powerful your workshops are and your presentations and the things that you could work with. And I'm sure if people reached out to you and said, hey, can you coach us as a couple? I'm sure you would say, yes, we'll find a way to make that happen. So
Oh,
Absolutely. Yes.
yeah. Well, look, this has been a pleasure to get to know you two a little bit more, to hear a little bit more about the book, what's coming up, how you processed it, how it's going to change and transform people's lives as they go through it. And I know people are just going to want to connect with you too.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
Thank
praying
you.
that it does exactly what it's supposed to do, and just at least initiate that healing journey, and open your minds.
Mm. Yes. Well, thanks for tuning in and being a part of this broadcast. This has been a pleasure to have these two with me, and it's been a pleasure to have you along for the journey as well through this. So make sure you reach out to Mickel and Lin Green and connect with them, get a copy of this book, and I know it'll bless your lives. So thanks. Until next time, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.